Well, everybody, this is Danielle, and she's going to be leading us through the due diligence parts for product and technology. And she was on, which team were we on together? Was it CID? I think it was.
Yeah, DID, I think we were on the same one, and I participated the following year that we gave it to Renovate and I think Surge Stream that year as well. I think we had a two for, but yeah,
Oh, okay.
DID was the my first one, and it was fun.
Direct was your
Was a good one. Were
Well, I
you
do.
on Ataract?
Yeah, that's right, Ataract.
Josh remembers. All
There you
right. So, do you have the document? Do you want to share it, or do you want me to share it?
Actually, yeah, I was actually gonna share some slides if that's okay, because I kind of accumulated some stuff and pulled some other things because I think product roadmap is kind of a separate deliverable that sometimes we don't see a lot going through due diligence in addition to the questionnaire, and it could, I don't know, I just thought it might help.
Excellent. Take it away. It's all yours.
Okay, give me 1 second. Let me share my screen first and then go into it. Can you guys see my screen? And then I'll go into presenter mode once I move my Zoom thing. Okay, can you guys see it? Do you guys still see me and Maggie on the right, or is that just me? I can't tell.
Nope, looks good.
Okay, cool. All right. Thank you for having me and for thinking of me, Maggie. Really appreciate that. And it's a pleasure to meet all of the founders. I think it takes a special kind of person to be a founder and to start your own company. So it's always a pleasure to meet them, and certainly a certain level of gumption to get to this level with AngelNV and going through their due diligence process. So thanks for having me. I'm going to go through just the product and technology section of the questionnaire, and then I'll do a little deep dive on product roadmaps today. Feel free to ask questions as we go through. Feel free to interrupt me. I just asked that you introduce yourselves because I haven't met this group yet. I would love to know who I'm talking to. So just with that, a quick thing about me. I'm Director of Product Development at DIRECTV, also a fractional COO for Ashworth Entertainment, which is a local film production company, and an angel investor. I've spent most of my career in media, sports, and technology. Started at the Ultimate Fighting Championship, launching UFC Fight Pass and UFC TV, which are big products that are still revenue generating in market today. Did a quick stint at Comcast, and then been at DirecTV for about the last 7 years, working on their improvements to their satellite product, launching their streaming product, and mostly focused now on doing integrations with all the major SVODs like Netflix and Apple and Peacock. I've worked with a few different investor groups, AngelNV being kind of my first and foremost here in the Valley. But I've also done both the educational program and the investor program with Going Venture Capital and Golden Seeds, which is targeted to women founded companies. My LinkedIn's here, and I can send these slides out afterwards. I just thought this was appropriate. I know that due diligence can be a daunting process, and I wanted to share this. I'm preparing for battle. I've always found that plans are useless, but planning is indispensable. So while the nature of due diligence may change and the details that you're putting in there may change, your ability to deliver as much detail as possible to really think through how things connect to each other is super key, and really shows a lot about you as a founder, but also how you're connecting all of your dots. Have they seen the questionnaire already, Maggie? They're familiar with it? Great. So you guys all know it's comprehensive, it covers a lot, but it will help you uncover potential gaps and areas of opportunity for you to focus on, maybe areas you've only scratched the surface and need to go deeper on. It'll help better position you and your company for investment, and really making you investor ready before fundraising. And it certainly will give you to the level of exposure of due diligence that you'll go under if you are applying for venture capital later on down the line. So it's 26 pages, super long, but 7 of those pages are for technology and product. And so that's what I'm going to focus on. And this isn't necessarily in this order of the questions. It was more kind of me looking at the questions and kind of grouping them in things that of what they cover. and we'll talk about some specific questions as well as we get through it. So there's kind of your core offering. This is your details of your features and your services, how your development processes operate, the maturity of your company. Your IP strategy focuses more on your patents, your trade secrets, really what gives you a defensible IP position. Supply chain and manufacturing, more applicable to physical goods, but could apply to software depending on where you're sourcing certain aspects of your code. But really looking at, your sourcing, production, your inventory management, then your regulatory landscape, which is any kind of approvals and compliance requirements, really barriers of entry for you to be able to play in the space. And then lastly, kind of your competitive advantages. So that is an analysis of your company's technology and IP and how those two things might create barriers for other entrants to enter the space or for you to have a sustainable edge if those do. So maybe that's like first to market or something like that. So what I'll do is I'll spend some time going through each of these bullets, but the first one will really kind of take up most of the time because I'll hit product roadmap in that section. Again, feel free to ask questions along the way. All right, so your core offering, that's details on your features, your development processes, your maturity of your products and services. You should know what stage, this is like some key question that's pulled directly from the questionnaire. What stage of development are you at? Are you at a concept? Do you have a prototype? Maybe you have a prototype with some feedback and testing already. Maybe you have a working product, but just one customer, and the extra funding you're looking to secure will give you, a new use case that unlocks another customer. Knowing kind of where you're at today and then where you're going is kind of the next question, which is, additional technologies, products and services envisioned, and how are they, and what are they, and their expected release timing. That could really be answered from a product roadmap. So if I don't know, Maggie, if this breaks the rules, but if I got this questionnaire and it said, see my detailed roadmap, a separate document, I would be totally okay with that. Because it's a lot to put into the questionnaire and it really should be a well thought out thing. But if you're, I think the document even asks for 3 to 5 milestones and when they're expected to hit. So this could be an example of that.
I think you handled CID really well. You asked them if they had a separate document, and I think they did. And so that's probably a good way to go about it.
Yeah. And so we'll talk some more about what a product roadmap might look like. Essentially, it should look like what you're doing today and tomorrow, maybe for the next month, where you're going to be with some degree of certainty. Hopefully, in the next 3 months, you have an idea, you have a pretty secure idea where you're going to be. Maybe 6 months, it's a little bit murkier, but 6, 9, 12, maybe even out to 18 months to show where your company is going to be, and what milestones are unlocked. Maybe it's commercial viability at that time. Maybe it's, hey, we're going to unlock a new cohort of customers. A document like that, which I'll go into more detail in the next few slides to talk about product roadmap specifically, would really help answer these questions. And this is just kind of a really specific question I pulled out. But if your strategy, it seems so nuanced, so just technical, but it has a big business implication. So an example is your technology easily integrated into the current standard or the technology platform of potential acquirers? If you are targeting Amazon as a potential buyer, not only should you be thinking about using AWS cloud services and using Amazon friendly languages like Java or Python, you should also be thinking about using their microservices or using going serverless and using Amazon Lambda, those kinds of decisions that could be foundational, that really make you more appealing to your eventual buyers. That kind of thought comes in now at that first, at your first planning stages. And yeah, so just an industry insight, investors are really looking at seeing a clear plan that takes you from where you are today to when you have something commercially valuable, or, even better, like exit ready. I'll pause there because I've said a lot so far. No?
I have
Quiet.
Sorry.
Go ahead.
I have one quick question. The only question I have is I know that at least in the years past, I know with the changing nature of Lena Khan now being put to the side with and opening up M&A is a little bit more different. But generally speaking, a lot of the advice has always been to say like to never for early stage founders to not talk about their exit strategy. So how should we balance that sort of thread when it comes to talking about the benefits of our infrastructure being similar to potential acquirers?
As an investor, speaking personally, I don't think it's a bad thing to hear that there's an exit strategy.
Okay.
And from other investors that I know, I don't think that that's a bad thing. I think it may depend on your audience and knowing where they are. If you have a strategy, I think that's an opportunity and a strength. I'll tell you, CID had an exit strategy.
That's good, yeah, because oftentimes what we hear is what I've heard at the very least is like, not to bog down too much on this, but that you don't want to bring it up because you don't want the investor to think that you're just in it for the exit for like a short amount of time, and you're going to take the lowest valuation possible to get yourself out of the company. Like that's like that was like one advice I've heard from
I think that's a
actually
nuanced thing. I'll tell you, I don't want a zombie company either. I don't want something that's going to continue to be there. And I think that runs a greater risk. I would rather you have a plan and be eager and then take the counsel of your advisors and your investors to slow roll it until you have maximum value on your valuation. Versus, hey, like I'm in it and I don't have a concept of where we're going. We're on this road and we have no destination.
Exactly. Okay.
And Borna, I can tell you that for CID, they were all pretty seasoned founders. And so it was absolutely believable that they would be working towards this exit.
Okay.
That they had been down the road before.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you for that. Sorry for sidetracking.
No worries. And sorry, who was talking?
My name is Borna.
Okay, nice to meet you, Borna.
Thank you, Danielle.
All right. All right, so we're going to delve into road mapping. So long-term vision. The best teams have a compelling long-term vision. Roadmaps are just the steps to get there. This is us finding a way to connect the dots and making that big promise of, hey, this is what I'm going to deliver. This is your opportunity and also your way to manage how you're going to get to that end state. I'm sure as founders and entrepreneurs, you feel this in all areas of your business, and it's no difference when it comes to product, which is prioritizing your features, figuring out what makes the most sense. Everything seems important. So some best practices I'll kind of share. And at the end of the day, it's something that all leaders struggle with. So it really comes down to product vision. When you have your product vision is well established and you know your company has missions and values, you know what target users you're after, you know what major problem you're solving for the world. When that's really clear, I think your product is more easily and more readily available to distill into a product roadmap how you're going to get there. So really we're focusing on this section, which is requirements and feature set. I'm not going into design and marketing strategy, but if you think about a roadmap as a document that says, hey, here's where I'm going to be in 3, 6, 9, 12 months from now, it will tell you a lot of important things. It will tell you at what point are you going to run out of money? At what point are you going to need a marketing plan to start to align in parallel next to your product roadmap? It will tell you when you're going to be ready for the next round. So all of those answers could not necessarily be fed directly from a product roadmap, but certainly the product roadmap will feed into them. And of course, from an engineering perspective, kind of show where you need to invest, how you need your architecture to evolve to support what kinds of features in the future. All right, so product management. And this is, I think, I can empathize with a lot of founders in that there are so many different things and all things are a big important problem for you to solve. You know, legal and corporate structure is a big deal. It's the right way. You're probably, most of your time is probably spent on fundraising, but I implore you to spend some time on really thoughtfully putting together your product roadmap so that you can articulate the product evolution and where you're going to go. It will, and most importantly, this is the first, this bullet point is it for me, personally. Demonstrating an efficient use of your limited resources. You don't have time, you don't have money to waste when you're in your startup environment. You need to maximize the value of every single dollar, and that will come from the sweat equity that you put in during your product roadmap and your featuring. But of course, you want to be able to establish an early product market fit by maybe doing a prototype and showing that there's some interest in your product or getting some positive feedback. You want to keep it really stripped down to MVP, but also have a roadmap that's murky enough to accommodate changes. So you kind of like you're sailing a course. Obviously, the closer you are in time, the more details should be there, and the further out in time, the more murky it can be. You just have a general direction. Questions there? All right. It's an example of a roadmap. I don't know if all of our founders here come from a technology background. Some of you are tech founders yourselves. I don't expect that maybe your roadmaps look this sophisticated at this stage. And that's probably true. It may not look like all development, but an idea of here's the dates that you're trying to hit. Here's this, certain milestones that are unlocked at what time and how much time. It will highlight for you, again, those other things that I say feed off of the product roadmap, when to market, when to continue to raise. If I saw maybe not even all these swim lanes, maybe just that first swim lane, from a founder that says, here's what I'm building in these stages. And then working to, once you have 3 people working, 3 developers working, you may need something like this to help manage the workflow. At least if you're doing an agile approach to development. If you're working more in a waterfall approach to development, that might not be necessary. But again, I think it's still hard to show value early on if you're approaching it from that methodology. And this is just a sample roadmap. It could look like this. It could look like one slide, could look like volume columns. Any questions?
Straightforward?
Sorry, was that yes or no?
No questions. It's straightforward.
All right, MVP. So I don't think I've seen this too much lately, but it used to be kind of one of the challenges I think founders had, which was focusing on building the car. Like, I'm going to build the car one piece at a time. But instead of building the car, build a skateboard first, get some feedback. Do your customers and target audience even want the car? It's some very basic MVP kind of approach to showing value as quickly as possible, which helps build confidence in your requirements and your roadmap, tells you're in the right direction, gives you an opportunity to pivot if you're not headed in the right direction. From an investor perspective, it also shows us that you're willing to learn quickly, get feedback, and pivot, make those changes, and use your money wisely. Because what happens is you can't spend money all the way to get to the car and then find out that something doesn't work. Any questions there? Okay. All right, so just some kind of what investors seek, well-defined milestones like we talked about, some product fit and scalability potential, risk identification, mitigation strategies. If you, for example, are getting feedback that's not great, or that tells you need to pivot, and your reaction to that and how quickly you can do that will tell you how well you're able to mitigate risk. And a clear connection, obviously, between your roadmap and your revenue goals. Long-term value, you'll get trust with your investors. You're much more likely to get more money. Many of you will have to go through multiple rounds of funding. If you have a clear plan, you're executing it here, you're reporting out regularly, hey, we had this plan, we just need this bridge to get to this extra place. Or maybe you've met a certain amount of milestones before that, you're going to get that confidence for that next round. Because when you're fundraising, you're not just fundraising for this round, you're building a reputation with investors for follow-on rounds. And yeah, sustainable growth and competitive positioning, all this stuff is important. That's my speech on product road mapping before we jump into IP, which is some key questions from the questionnaire. Anything on product before I jump to IP stuff? And which is really, not my core my core competence, but I will definitely represent it as best I can.
Danielle, I love that you made these slides and that you focused on the perspective of still talking to customers and making sure that you're adapting as they change what they're telling you.
Yeah.
Love
No,
that.
I think, yeah, definitely you cannot be coding in a vacuum. And I'm really focusing as if all of our founders have some kind of technology company. So if someone is more of a service based or a physical good, yeah, please feel free to ask questions on that. Okay. Okay, so IP strategy. It's really two sides to this. What are your approved patents? What do you have and have ownership of? And have you done a patent search? First side is how much are your ideas protected? And second is, are you infringing on somebody else's idea? Both of which, one carries obviously more risk than the other. Has a patent search been performed? We can't play in a space that somebody else has rights in, or there are guardrails with which you can play in that space. So it's important to know that, to show you've done your research. It's especially important in rapidly changing environments. So if you're working in AI or Web3 or crypto, all of that stuff, we should be, consistently doing research on that. Just as an example, it can be a barrier to exit as well if you don't have IPs. So, or IP, a good IP strategy and certain patents available. For example, like if you were targeting to get eventually acquired by like Google, they need to have IP patents available. That is a deal breaker for them, and they won't contemplate the technology. Anything on IPs?
Sorry, I'm gonna go on video.
Yeah.
I'm JJ. I guess when it comes to IPs and actual, like, let's say written code and things like that, like I don't have much knowledge in that area and like what it extends to. I don't know if you'll be able to kind of elaborate further on just like what can people put like the IPs, like, or what
A
is it?
patent.
Patent. Yes, sorry.
Yeah. Well,
Patent on
I'm not a patent lawyer. I'm not a patent lawyer, but I do know there are many options out there. I mean, there's even something called the poor man's patent, which means you can like write an idea down and then send it to yourself and mark it as something that you own. So number one, I would tell you to talk to a patent lawyer. I think you can conduct a patent search on your own. There's definitely a website that you can look that up. The difficulty, I think, with patents is understanding them once they're written and what jurisdiction they apply to. For example, if you're filing for your own patent, you want to make sure you do it in all major jurisdictions within the country, not just a US federal patent, because ideally, if you could, to have as much coverage as possible. And there are also patents that expire. So what I would say is, I'm not the right person on how to secure it, but I can tell you, you should definitely consult someone who is a right consultant lawyer.
For sure. I don't think we would
Mhm.
be in a spot for a patent, to be honest. It's just I've been always curious about like what software typically one would patent, I guess, or things like that. So
I mean, your architecture, you could definitely patent. I know some people who have like 20 patents just off of ideas and concepts that they had. You don't have to have working code to have a patent. You just have to have an idea of how something would work. Definitely consult with an architect on it, and you can both file a patent. It's a lengthy process, mostly because you have to go through the search process as well. And if you hire a lawyer to do that for you, I think they could better give you like a quote on both the timing as well as the price it would take to do that. But I know you don't have to have working code to be able to do it. You just have to have a concept.
okay, cool. Thank you.
Full disclosure, so I've worked with patent lawyers and writ large have underwritten a lot of companies during my time in investment banking. Danielle's absolutely right. You can definitely patent like your infrastructure, for example, and a lot of these things. Certain software features, however, JJ, writ large is very difficult to actually get like patents approved on certain features, for example. So that's something
Yeah,
that
like if it's too large or nebulous, like
Yeah.
it's,
Yeah.
yeah, there are going to be so many people playing that space, or if it's not clear or detailed enough, I could see.
Exactly. Anyway, just thought I should share that.
Yeah, no, I appreciate it. Thank you, man.
Think.
Hi, I had a question too.
Yeah.
So
I'm sorry,
you
just gonna
did,
jump in.
oh, can you hear me?
I can hear you, and I heard someone else. too.
My question was you'd said that it was a long, like a lengthy and expensive process. My programmer was saying that with the way we're building our program, we can get a software patent. Do you know the difference between that and any other patent, and how long that might take?
No, I don't. Like I said, I do know that there's a poor man's patent, which is kind of like something that, like, the way I would think about it is the less you invest up front, probably the less security it probably has to offer, right? So if you're depending on, like, that might be scope, that might be scale. So yeah, I think you should definitely consult a lawyer on that one.
But let
Thank
me
you.
jump in with a couple of
Yeah.
thoughts. Jeff usually says that it's very difficult to get software patents because you're patenting like the end product, and there's more than one way to skin a cat with
Yeah.
software.
Mhm.
And so they're not necessarily going to patent the way that you skinned your cat because they'd be issuing patents all the time. The poor man's patent, if you do go that route, it's important that you drop your description of what you're doing in an envelope in a mailbox where it will get postmarked. And then when you receive it, don't open it. Don't open it until you have to. Because you could stick anything in an envelope afterwards. But we also, I'm going to put into chat here, Patrick Griffiths. He is the IP librarian for UNLV. And so if you need to do a search, he can help you with that.
There you go. Yay.
Awesome, thank you.
Sal, did you have
Maggie.
something you wanted to add? Okay, yeah.
Yeah. Hey, Maggie, thanks. Appreciate it. Hi, Danielle. How are you?
Good.
Great. Yeah, I was just gonna chime in relation to the patent thing. It's kind of what we do with Edison and patents. We kind of like patents, Thomas Edison. So patents are kind of our geek out thing.
Clever.
But what I was gonna say is we spend a lot of time thank you, appreciate that, pun intended, Maggie. I'm here all week, 2 shows on Sunday. What I was going to say was what we've been doing this summer with our company, Charge Edison, which is primarily in the EV charging space, solar powered EV charging, is we don't really have some of our advisors that we had this summer had pointed out to us correctly. Is that some of the what gave them pause, and they felt would give potential investors pause, was the lack of intellectual property that we had that was exclusive to us. There was nothing that was really protectable. And we really didn't have any proprietary software that was exclusive to us, which was, a very valid point. What we started focusing on, just through advice through our patent attorneys, was really focus on process patents, the difference between product patents and process patents. I think for a lot of us in the spaces that we're in, when you're looking at IP, you'll find yourself looking more at process patents. I think we probably struck gold to be able to have something that is novel, and that you'll hear that term novel come up a lot when it comes to patents, because you have to have something that's novel, meaning something that's unique to you. That's patentable, because Maggie made a great point to where you're skinning your cat is not necessarily a novel thing. So that aspect. So most of us are going to fall in that space of process patents as opposed to product patents, because I don't think any of us are coming up with any specific way. And what Jeff says is spot on, because with the software product, with the product patents for software, if you change one line of code, then that can, that's why people don't really go into that area of software patents. So Jeff is spot on with that. So most of us will find ourselves in the process patent area. And that's really important, especially when we're going into artificial intelligence, things of that nature, because you might just find a novel way of
You're cutting out a little bit. I
something
mean, before it was a little bit, and now it's a
in
lot.
the space of artificial. Sorry about that, guys, but you get the gist of what I'm saying. Process patents is the way to go.
Totally. No, thank you. Thank you for sharing. Really appreciate that. We caught most of it. I don't know if he was cutting out for everybody, but just a little bit for me. One example that I had heard of, just over the years that I thought was interesting was about BlackBerry. Has everybody heard that one? BlackBerry had really strong patents against physical keyboards on phones, but just didn't, foresee the touchscreen revolution. And so just those kind of looking for adjacent areas and growth areas that you could potentially see and securing an IP position for those adjacent areas would be something to contemplate as well. Okay, moving on, supply chain and manufacturing. This section, most of the questions I saw really were around physical goods and hard goods, but it could apply if you are, for example, sourcing data or some other kind of service, digital service if you're working on software. This is like soup to nuts, your manufacturing process. If you're taking raw materials and you're transforming it into a finished product, what does that look like end to end? What do your, I think actually CID had both software and hardware components. Where were they sourced? Were they in the country? Were they outside? Did they, did it need to go through customs? What were your potential bottlenecks and hangups that could prevent you from growth or even from, reaching some major milestones? That's something that's really clear. So that's something that if you have an end-to-end kind of documented, it can become clear. And if you do know, I should also point this out, if you do know you have a vulnerability, I would say it's better to highlight that vulnerability and say, here are the ways with which I'm going to mitigate against that and the risks, or mitigate against that risk. Because I think it looks worse if an investor and you're just hoping the due diligence team isn't paying attention and that they miss that and they don't ask that question. I think it builds more trust also, because again, you're raising for future rounds, right? So saying, here's what I am, here's an issue that I have, here's some of the risks I see and how I plan to mitigate it. And maybe you will even encourage more support and help from that particular investor or that community. Obviously, when you're not only can you look for hangups, but you can also look for areas of efficiency and scalability throughout your supply chain. That section may not apply to most of us, it sounds like. And regulatory landscape. This is really, honestly, from an investor perspective, us trying to understand what are the hurdles that you're going to have to overcome in order for your product to hit the market. What government agencies or certifications that are going to be necessary for your product to be out, maybe even a plan on how you, if you're working, for example, in healthcare and have some kind of healthcare product, you might have to have a plan around when your trials are, when certification can happen thereafter, how much time, and building that into your ultimate plan for sort of like product, because it's less about development board, but actually really building into your product development line. Here's also some additional time for approval. Here's when I become profitable thereafter, or I'm commercially viable and I can start acquiring customers. It also will highlight, for investors, maybe they do have contacts or, they're established in that respective field. It can help them see how they can be an asset to you as well, because I think it works both ways. Any questions on that? I think those are pretty straightforward.
Not a question, but something to add just from
Yeah.
experience would be, this is not a section to hide the ball at all. Especially if something pops up that is a risk, you need to identify it here. And this goes for kind of the entirety of the questionnaire. If the investor can uncover something or find a regulatory issue, or really anything in the questionnaire that they've only done by doing an hour or two of research, and doesn't show up on your questionnaire, that's not a good look. So especially in this section, I've just had experience where we did some light digging into a company and all these regulatory issues kind of popped up and they weren't really mentioned at all. And so it's not that you don't, if there is regulatory issues, that's not a deal killer. It's just, we want to know that you know what the regulatory issues and landscape are. And yeah, so.
Yeah. I will say also, there is a crawl, walk, run approach that you can take to regulate, to regulatory. So for example, Stripe looked at one kind of cohort of customers, which was like payment for developers, which in like one region, which is the United States. And so, they focused on that before they grew to where they were. So keeping in mind, if you can prove viability of your product in a more regulation friendly region of the country, or maybe slicing and dicing your roadmap in such a way, again, it's about showing value more quickly and faster. That I think goes a long way and lends credibility to you securing, approvals in the broader sense. Okay.
Can I add something to that real quick? This
Yeah.
is Garrett. So, in certain industries and certain states, if something isn't explicitly allowed, then it's actually considered illegal by default. So the alcohol business, healthcare, financial industry. So something to keep in mind, if you can build a track record in one area or with an organization who may have temporary approval, that actually can help you work with regulators to get approval down the road. So just something to keep in mind.
Yeah, no, great. Okay. And competitive advantages. I think there's a few approaches to competitive advantages. I think there's this, hey, this management team are, previous successful founders, or they're well established in this industry and area. I think those, of course, lend themselves, relationships lend themselves as a competitive advantage. But I think what speaks a little bit louder, and shows a little bit more credibility is going to be, maybe a lot more credibility, is around IP. Are you in a protected space? If you're playing in that protected space, that's great. And if it's not that, maybe it's like your first to market or your second to market, and you can do this in a much better, smarter way. I think there are different theories on how you position what a competitive advantage is, but knowing yours and your companies, and how you want to position yourselves, both from a customer perspective as well as from an investment perspective. If you're thinking about it from all points of view, can create an impression to investors that this is a better looking deal to us. Okay. I think that might be it. There are no questions outside of that. I know I ran right through it. Sorry, I talk so fast, guys.
No, that was great. Thank you. Seriously, this is awesome.
That was great. Megan, what is your product or service?
We do a CAD development. It's for a specific industry. It's for pool design, and then we want to branch out into other industries after that.
Cool.
So are you providing the service of the design, or do you have software for it?
Yeah, it's SaaS. We have a prototype right now, and our programmers have ownership in the company, so they have a vested interest in keeping it going.
Nice.
So it's developed.
Sorry, so are you kind of like maybe the yard's end for pools, so you're selling to the customers, or are you selling to, the contractor?
To the contractor, yeah.
Gotcha.
I actually had another question. As an investor, so my partner was suggesting that we call, not that you know what my product is, that we call different pool design companies and just like try to gauge interest. How important is that in in presenting that information to an investor? Like, is that something that you commonly see? Is that something that you like to see?
I think I should definitely see it. When you say call, I mean, you basically have your potential client list, and you're gauging interest, and you're kind of doing a market feedback survey. So yeah, I would definitely look at that, qualitatively. It's really how you present it though. Like if you say, hey, I met a couple people and I said they're really interested, but if you throw up a chart and you're like, hey, I've called 100 companies within the Las Vegas Valley, 20 of them didn't answer, but like these other ones, like, this number were interested. This, I think shows a lot of gumption on the behalf of the founders. And it shows that they have that kind of self-starter mentality.
Awesome.
Okay, other questions? They can be about anything that has to do with the due diligence so far.
I would add on to Danielle's last answer that it would depend on kind of where you are, right? If you're pre-revenue, we absolutely would want to see, hey, listen, we've gone out into the market and we've gotten responses that people want this product, right? Now, if you're post-revenue and you're showing strong revenue, less important to show a survey of some sort. But pre-revenue, absolutely, we need some indication that the market wants what we're trying to sell.
That's really helpful. Thank you.
All right, well, if there's no more questions, we don't have to belabor this. It's a lot easier to review things than it is to actually fill out your questionnaire. That takes a long time. And you've learned tonight that you should have a separate document that is your product roadmap. Yeah.
You can't fit it into that little box.
Yeah. And
Danielle,
let's see,
a
on the
question for
call.
Danielle. Are there any resources that you know of off the top of your head for someone looking to kind of create their product roadmap if they've never done something like that before? Or
Yeah, I actually meant to add that to the slide and I forgot. Honestly, I worked on these a little bit today and so that's why I forgot. I will definitely send something and I can send the slides too if anyone wants them.
Yes, if you send me the slides, we'll upload them to HubSpot and they'll be included in the follow-up email that gives them the link to the YouTube presentation and then any other assets that we want to include.
Sure. Let me just add another slide and I'll add resources at the end.
Great. All right, troops. Well, next Tuesday, it will be Josh and Garrett Stanley. They'll be talking about sales and marketing due diligence. And I'm looking forward to that a lot. Garrett, what's your background?
Oh, that's a loaded question. My background is in finance predominantly, and then sales and operations for cybersecurity and financial instruments. So that's the short and easy.
That sounds heavily regulated.
It is very heavily regulated. I think I earned a degree as a jailhouse lawyer. At least that's how it feels. But
as someone that was spent his career in finance, I absolutely relate to that statement.
yeah, absolutely. So, but I'm excited for next week. And
yeah,
Danielle,
that'll be 95% Garrett and 5% myself. So just expectations set.
Bring some questions, Josh.
I will. Absolutely.
And Borna, you can too.
We'll do.
Yeah.
Count on me.
And Danielle, I think you did a great job today. I really like the product roadmap you put up. That's often something that people don't seem to grasp very easily. And as a foreshadow for next week, having a sales roadmap is really important. Even if you're pre-revenue, having some idea as to how to tackle sales is super important.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah, great job, Danielle. I will share
so
one.
much.
Thank you very much.
Story. I want to share a story before we hop off about Danielle. Embarrass her a little bit.
So
my first AngelNV was AngelNV 2, and Danielle was a member. And if anyone knows my background, it's in professional gambling. So I have my last actual job, as it were, was as a tour guide at Oregon State during college. My entire professional life has been gambling. So I came into AngelNV 2 knowing nothing about traditional business. And I made it my mission to just shut up and listen to as many people as I could and try and identify the people who I thought were exceptionally sharp and bright in the space. And I could tell you guys that Danielle was my #1 draft pick. Anytime that she said anything, it was incredibly insightful. And I really keyed in and tried to listen to whatever she had to say. So I should have started with that before you got into
Oh,
everything.
I
But I was
appreciate
super excited when I heard that you were doing it. I was like, oh, you guys really take what she has to say serious, because she's exceptionally bright and talented. So
Thank you. Appreciate that. And thank you so much for having me, Maggie. Really appreciate talking to you guys and meeting you guys. And maybe I'll see you at the next round of AngelNV, it sounds like.
Let's hope so.
This is that
Yeah.
group.
Great.
All right.
Great.
All right, everybody. Thank you. We'll get the email out on Friday with the links to the video and everything else.